I can go first with concluding thoughts. Thank you so much for asking us some sharp questions. And I also realize that a large Zoom call format is not the ideal place for many people to ask questions. I tend to melt into the background of a call like this, unless I'm actually supposed to be speaking. My email is open. I do try to respond to emails. I may not actually be helpful, you know, depending on my expertise, but you're welcome to track me down and email me if there's a specific project or question that you have, and I'll try to get back to you, you know, with links to the resources that I think might help. And really, my concluding remark is what I believe, that the best way to get started is to get started. There's no substitute. Like, I didn't learn this stuff by learning text analysis and then doing a project. I learned this stuff by having a project that I really wanted to do, and step by step saying, okay, these texts are on the internet. How do I download one? Okay, now how do I speed up that download process? Okay, how do I ingest one into a computer readable format? Like, okay, now how do I do that for many? Okay, how do I search for words? Okay, how do I search for multiple words? And built up in this, you know, linear way that really is just teaching yourself a project. And, you know, there's nothing to compare with the motivation that comes from having a real question that you want to answer about the world, and then finding the solutions to each of your problems step by step. Those solutions are out there. But I wouldn't recommend that you work through my materials and then find a project. I would say, go find the thing you want to do in the world, the thing you want to learn. And then, you know, my tools and anyone else's tools are just resources that you cobble together to do the project. And you really can teach yourself this stuff. It just takes a project that you're passionate about to give you the motivation to get through the hard parts. And there are some hard parts, but I think each of us, obviously not an unbiased sample, but we would argue that it's worth getting through those hard parts, because the answers can be very, very satisfying. And the research is fun to do.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think Rich's remarks are super helpful, and you should really listen to them. I think one thing I just want to continue to emphasize is that you don't need to have a ton of technical skills or familiarity with coding or even statistics to start using some of these things. And a lot of the things that Rich just described, figuring out on his own, now several years later, a lot of these tools are actually publicly available and have step-by-step guides to get you started. So it's a much easier time to be getting into this than I think it used to be, and it'll continue to get easier as more and more people are doing it. And I also want to emphasize that this is something that you should think about as another tool to use in conjunction with all the qualitative and quantitative tools you already use, where nobody is advocating that you replace all your research with text analysis. This is just something else that you can add into your researcher toolkit. And especially during times where you're not able to do fieldwork or fieldwork is slow, it's really nice to have projects that you can control from your own computer. And I think that makes your life as a researcher a lot easier. And like Rich said, I'm always happy to answer questions, and feel free to send an email anytime. And then the final plug I'll give is, while I agree that kind of the best way to get started is just to get started, Molly Roberts, Justin Grimmer, and Brendan Stewart have a new textbook that's coming out soon that I was able to use in the text class that I taught this past semester, and it's very user-friendly. And I think even just reading the non-technical introductory chapters can get you started thinking of why you might want to use text as data, and what research questions you already have that would be a good fit for this. And I think once you go down that track, you kind of get hooked on it, and then you start seeing the world as, you know, full of text that might be good additions to your research. So once that becomes publicly available, I definitely recommend checking it out. And again, thank you all so much for being here, and feel free to reach out with questions.
I just want to say that I agree with everything that Rich and Alex said. And I just want to say, as a latecomer to text analysis, that not be discouraged by what seems to be a learning curve at the beginning. And that's, at least in the context of Arabic, honestly, it unleashed like many possibilities of fascinating, you know, questions to be answered, and also just so much data out there. Like for me, I grew up around the cassette tape, for example, you know, the culture, and to just see them like stored right like out there, just you can access. To me, that's amazing. And also to countries that they're difficult to study, like the country I'm studying. So I'm saying, do not be discouraged with that, what seems to be a learning curve at the beginning, because there is a huge upside. And sometimes fun things, like one thing I do just to play with text analysis, analyzing poetry, you know, like medieval poets versus modern poets, just for fun. So I definitely support and encourage you all to use this method, like Alex said, in conjunction with other methods, and to learn from Alex and Rich's work, because they have guided me along the way as somebody who is new to text analysis.